So I'm live now. I know this from past episodes, but I'm not gonna rush it. Just gonna let it happen. Okay. Yep. Then we're going. We're good. We're good. Let me just turn off the sound here. So I don't know if anyone's going to be watching this. I don't know how this is going to go. This is the first ever solo episode of Streams from the Gutter, which is something I hope to do more of, these solo ones, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. And I don't know if I have a co host that wants to sit here and listen to me pontificate. So hopefully, some of you out there want to sit down and listen to me pontificate. And tonight, I am going to be doing some pontificating because we're going to be talking about Skeen Records. I don't know where I am on the screen, but I should be on the screen for you right now, and you should be seeing Skeen Records if I did this all right. This will be a PowerPoint presentation. It's not going to be very flashy. I should probably have had more visual aids figured out. And as I said, like, we'll see how it goes. We might not finish this because there's a lot of records to talk about. But we are going to be talking about, to me, one of the most interesting record labels ever, Skeen Records. Skeen Records was a record label founded by Jeff Spiegel in the late 80s in Connecticut. I believe it was the New Britain area of Connecticut. He took the name from a coworker that he had at a country club that he was working at. And Jeff would actually put on a bunch of shows back then. The country club, by the way, is Timberland Golf Club in Kingston, Connecticut, where Jeff worked with his coworker. Jeff put on shows, did shows for like local bands back then, and did shows for I think a few bands that were coming up around this time. It's Youth Through Summer, 1988, a heady summer. And so in the wake of this, he makes a bit of money doing a show and has some left over and decides to put it into putting out a record. And that first record is the compilation Better Yet Connecticut Hardcore Comp, which came out in 1988 on Skeen Records. By the time the record came out, Jeff had already made the move to St. Paul, Minneapolis, where most of the label history kind of goes from there. This compilation was distroed by Caroline Records and had a pressing of 500 copies. It features a lot of local great hardcore bands from around that time: Big Gulp, Freedom of Choice, Fallback, Scooter X, and Forced Reality. It's a split release with No Help Records, who actually put out individual 7-inches for Freedom of Choice. I think the Big Gulp 7-inch, maybe there's a Scooter X 7-inch too, and those are all phenomenal. But the band we're going to be focused on for this release is Forced Reality. It was a band formed out of the ashes of Skeletal Remains and features future vocalist for 100 Demons and Higher Forces. Pete Morrissey was the vocalist for the Forced Reality. They were kind of like a skinhead oi band. The crew for this band featured Elgin James, who was also sometimes vocalist for this group, a future member of Righteous Jams, and also future member of Wrecking Crew, sang in Skeletal Remains as well as Jocko Willink, who is a podcaster, a former Navy SEAL, and a best-selling author. And the two of them together would form the crew FSU. And in Elgin's words when he was on the podcast, this was done originally because he's being black and Jocko Willink having Native American ancestry. Both of them felt that it was, or being Native American, I should say, both of them felt that it was ridiculous that how many Nazis were showing up in the scene, and formed this crew to kind of originally address this scene presence. Another fascinating fact about Forced Reality is that they had a manager for a brief period of time. And that manager was Jesse Luscious from the band Blatz, The Criminals, in England, still doing amazing punk stuff to this day. Jesse and met Elgin when they were at college together and had a band there. And when Elgin moved back to Connecticut, Jesse came with them and briefly managed Force Reality and booked a tour for them as well during this period. Force Reality put out a record later on Patriot Records, which was the label run by Choke from Slapshot, which also put out the Stars and Stripes LP. Yeah, the LP and the Bruisers first 7-inch before folding. The second, a crazy release. So let me update this. There we go. I'm going to be updating this thing when this thing's all said and done. This is going to be full of a lot of stuff, but we'll get there. The second release on this label on Skeen was Fall Back, which is actually release number 1.5, and the Scene Is Back tape. I have no information about this. I've never heard this tape. I do like the Fallback stuff that I have heard, so I'd like to get a copy of this thing, but it might be a harder one to track down. Never even seen one for sale. The next release that they would do, Skeen Records number 2, was the Caution compilation. This was 1,000 press run on red with red and yellow sleeves. I think I actually have my copy. Oh, there it is. I got a red one right there. This was a 3-band compilation. The A side is an early appearance by Berkeley punk gods. Dare not say pop punk gods. Crimpshrine, and 3 awesome classic songs: Trying Too Hard, Construction, and Sanctuary. We'll be talking about the song Sanctuary a little bit later as well. Hint, it gets spicy. It's also the solo outing though for Providence, Rhode Island's Boneyard, who opened the B-side with the grungy punk song Toys, which is about the gendering of toys. Now, Boneyard features Gail Greenwood, who is the future member of Belly. She was in L7, currently playing in Gang of Four. Super, super cool person. Never met her, but from afar, a very super cool person. So Boneyard was her band. And then the other band on this is New Jersey's A Priori. Probably, I'm going to brutalize a lot of pronunciations. Hopefully I pronounced that right. A Priori? Maybe I'm getting closer. Maybe not. Which is with the Husker Du vibe song Black September. This band was formed out of the ashes of the band Ed Anger's Army, which featured Andrew Reich, who left by the time they changed the name to A Priori to go to university, who is the future executive producer of the TV show Friends, and also the director and producer of the Red Cross Born Innocent documentary. Also did Run's House and a bunch of other stuff. I should have updated this earlier. There's this Caution. And then here we go for the next round of bands. A Priori also put out an LP on Old World Records, I believe is the name of the label. But a fantastic band, a fantastic record. The record is called Damn the Past. All right, on to Skeen Records number 3. Skeen Records number 3 is the Awake with an exclamation point Beliefs 7-inch, and it came out in 1989. Now this was a 3-way label split release with Trash American Styles TPOS, ran by the Florida turned Connecticut legend Malcolm Tent, who also played in the band Broken Talent, and as well as being maybe the first ever release, was supposed to be the first ever release for Tony Brummel's infamous Victory Records. But owing to miscommunication, both TPOS and Victory Records were left off the artwork of the record, much to the chagrin of Tony Victory, as I'll talk about in a second. This was pressed, 1,000 of them were on black, 200 were on red. It's a very dark red. It looks black if you find one. 150 of these were to be numbered and sold exclusively by Victory Records. But as I said, this release did not go over too well in Tony's eyes, because his label was, of course, left off the back of this sleeve. As you see on this sleeve, all that's there is Skeen Records. There it is. All that's there is the Skeen Records thing. And this upset Tony so much so that when some poor kid ordered a copy of this record, Tony included a letter on very early Victory stationery. There's the Bulldog stamp, and it says Dan to the kid who ordered it. Here's your Awake 7-inch. Skeen Records finally sent me the covers. They really dicked me over. I totally regret helping those fools out. This whole thing only makes Victory look bad. 2 more 7-inches will be out on Victory in the first week of February. Chicago's Billingsgate, Cleveland's Integrity. Both 7-inches are $4, blah, blah, blah. Victory shirts are available now. He had shirts right away. That's that Victory marketing genius right there. The shirts are there before the records are even there. And I hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Tony Victory. And just for punctuation on that, he wrote, Jeff Spiegel, which is, of course, the owner of Skeen, I will break your neck, sinner, on the dust sleeve. And there is the number out of 150 on that. So this is really the origin of Victory Records right here through Skeen Records. And the band itself featured people that would go on to do amazing things. Don Sizemore would go on to start the, I don't know, I guess foundational for that kind of No Idea sound and scene band, Claire Mel. The guitarist Edwin Velez Collins would go on to start the blistering hardcore band End of the Century Party. And bassist Trevor Slimser would move to New York and start working with Steve Martin from the band AF and the Straw Dogs at the famed Nasty Little Man management publicity company, and immortalized by the Beastie Boys on the Hello Nasty record, because when you used to call them, they would pick up the phone and say, Hello Nasty. And I remember doing that to try and get an interview with Sick of It All way back when. And Trevor would have a stint managing Sick of It All, Andrew WK, International Noise Conspiracy, and would also be one of the key people in setting up Noisy at Vice. The drummer, Craig Huffman, would go on to play in Nasty Savage for a while. And then the metal supergroup Gardy Lou, which also apparently has an exclamation point in the name of the band, and then would wind up drumming in the Independents under the name Mormo Stinkbat. Sadly, he did pass away in 2015, so rest in peace to Craig Huffman. The Independence record, though, was produced by Joey Ramone, and Joey was a huge fan of this band, and I believe also managed them, because I remember having a friend having to call him about booking the Independence at some point. So the Awake 7-inch, let's add this to our charts. There we go, Awake, and boom, look at that. This thing's starting to fill up. Then we're just warming up. We're just getting our warm-up suit off type thing. Release number 4 on Skeen Records. We've got Chop Chop, a compilation which came out in 1989. It was a tri-state hardcore compilation featuring bands from New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, 1,000 pressed. All of these records at this point, I believe, are still distributed through Caroline. The distribution will change in a moment to a different place, but I don't think that's happened yet. The compilation featured New Jersey's Constant Grief, New York's Bad Trip, more on them in 1 second, Connecticut's Payback, and New York's A-Bomb, A-Nations, which would go on to become Greyhound, and Vicious Bite, who were formerly Under Pressure, would feature member Marcio Vega, who go on to do backups on Killing Times, Brightside LP, and would join the Noiseville band Accidental Tribe, which featured on drums Dino Sex of the Murder Junkies. If you've seen Hated, you will definitely remember who Dino is immediately. From there we go on to the release. The 5th release on this label is Beef Trust with their self-titled 7-inch, which came out in 1989. Beef Trust. Oh wait, this is why I need a producer, so someone to add all this stuff. Oh, I forgot the other thing about the Awake thing. Okay, back to Awake for a second. Awake also was a early production job for Scott Burns, and it was recorded at Morris Sound. Scott Burns, of course, is a legendary heavy metal producer who did like foundational to the death metal sound, the Florida sound of stuff, Morris Sound. Played in ASSUC, which we'll be talking a little bit more about as well in a minute. A legendary producer, a legendary figure, but produced the Awake 7-inch. Okay, now we move on. Here we go. Oh, and I kind of revealed the Bad Trip thing. Marcos Siega. Siga? Once again, apologies for pronunciation. Is the showrunner of the Dexter, both Dexter reboots that have come out, or the Dexter reboot definitely, and maybe that prequel show as well. Has done music videos for a bunch of different bands. A great writer, done other work in TV and films, but he played in Bad Trip. I should have gotten that later on. As I say, this is like the first time I'm doing this whole presentation, so we're learning as I'm learning on this thing. All right, so next we got our Beef Trust, who are added to this chart as well. Beef Trust featured Taylor Lenane, who is the founder of the defunct Gimme Radio, which some of you may remember. Just a little factoid about that. All right, the next label on this on Skene Records is the Walt Mink Geneismaker. Yeah, I'm really, once again, the pronunciation I'm struggling with. This is the Corton Harmon Local or Rev War Cocksucker split 7-inch, which came out in 1990. Here's where the distribution shift happens for Skene Records. Now they are being distributed from Twin Cities Imports, which is a Minneapolis-based distribution company. This 7-inch came out on Black and White Records. Both bands are operating out of St. Paul at this time, which is now where Jeff Spiegel is firmly established. And this is kind of the first, this is the first local thing he does, and does more local stuff as time goes on. But this is the kind of shift away from the more East Coast hardcore stuff that he'd been focused on up until this point, minus the Crimp Shrine and Boneyard and stuff. But this is definitely stylistically a shift for the label. Geneismaker is a noise rock band, whereas Walt Mink is straightforward, kind of straight up pre-Nirvana alt rock. Like you know when you hear it, like that sort of like late 80s, early 90s, post Replacements, post REM, American indie rock, I guess. Yeah, pre-Nirvana indie rock. Walt Mink was formed by John Kimbrough, who is the son of the late great Charles Kimbrough, who you may remember from the TV show Murphy Brown, where he was the anchor on that show. And Joey Warnocker is the brother of Warnocker. Joey Warnocker is the brother of that dog and the composer of the Yellow Jackets TV show theme song, Anna Warnocker. And also, they are both the son of Warner Records legend, and I believe one of the founders of DreamWorks, Lenny Warnocker. And they are the grandchildren of Simon Warnocker, who is the inspiration for Simon from Alvin and the Chipmunks, and also the head of Liberty Records, who put out records for Donovan, Frank Sinatra, all sorts of super important people from different time period. Not punk people, so we're not going to really fucking talk about them too much. The band formed when they were all attending Macalester College, and they met Candace Belanoff, who's the bass player of the band. As I say, this band, well, certainly in the case of Joey, comes from music royalty lineage of great distinction. But even John Kimbrough comes from, like an entertainment movie kind of background, TV background. And so it's only natural that both would go on into these respective fields. John went on to compose music for TV and films, including one of my favorite shows, The Great North. He's also done music for the Oscars. and Sullivan's Travels, starring Jack Black, which is interesting because Joey Warnocker was credited by Jack Black when he was on Turn It a Punk as being the reason that he stopped playing music and went into comedy after Joey's high school band blew Jack Black's high school band off the stage so badly that they just decided to break up, and he decided to not focus on music and to go into comedy instead. So, yeah, huge early role for Joey in the history of pop culture. But Joey himself is no slouch. He would leave Walt Mink and move back to Los Angeles and become the first drummer for Beck as he was beginning to form, and I believe plays on Odelay, as well as going on later to play in everything from REM to playing with Roger Waters, and he is currently the drummer in Oasis. Pretty good, pretty good. So let's add this monstrosity to the list. There we go. Also, it's strange that Jack Black is connected to both Joey and John separately. But you can see that represented by that line right there. All right, on to the next release on this label, which is 007, The Dog Tired, A Bone to Pick with the World 7-inch, which came out in 89, which would make it technically come out before the Walt Mink 7-inch, but I think it's just maybe recorded in 89, didn't come out to 90 type thing, you know, who knows. But they're a post-Youth Crew, kind of late 80s East Coast hardcore band from New Jersey. Really cool vocals, some awesome kind of emotive moments, peeking their head in there too. Great band, worth checking out. But most of all, fascinating because this is a early mixing job for Kieran Walsh, who would go on to mix and record records for Black Star, Cage, Black Moon, Madonna, Mobb Deep, Big Pun, hundreds of other people. And this is one of the first things he ever mixed was this Dog Tired 7-inch. And it sounds great. Great sounding record. All right, 008, we have, I don't want to say the most important release on Skeen because there's a lot of important records, but one of the greatest bands on Skeen Records for sure. Sticks and Stones with their Storm Coming 7-inch. It came out in 1990. I have always felt, to me, they reminded me of almost like a cross between like early AFI or maybe like mid-period AFI and like the Wipers. And I know some of you are like, oh, that's horrible. And so if that's you, still check out this band. I might just be giving you a terrible description of them, but I love this band. I love them so much. This is their second 7-inch. They were from Bridgewater, New Jersey. This was released on white and limited edition white vinyl and black vinyl. And there was 150 of them with a different photocopied sleeve. This is the first 7-inch they have. Peter Van Tantonio taking over vocal duties. Peter Van Tantonio, sorry, as well as the addition of Bloy Boo, aka Scott Hollingsworth, on keyboards. I love the first 7-inch a lot. This is a great leap forward for the band, and the sound is really kind of found on this 7-inch. Yeah, great band. We'll be talking about them a little bit more as we go on. 009 is a very strange record on this label. I've never actually seen a copy of this. This is still on my want list. The People's Court 7-inch, self-titled, from 1990. They were from Lutz, Florida. This is their only release. It's just raging early 90s kind of hardcore. It came out on pink and black vinyl. The drummer, Jason Dooley, would go on to play in Scrog, Culture, I Hate Myself, tons of other bands. Sorry, Sticks and Stones. And then Good People's Court. And then the vocalist, guitarist is Steve Heritage of the band Assuck, back to the more sound connection. He would go on also to play in Anthem 88, Judd, and the super underrated Bombs of Death. I don't think it's underrated. Everyone who hears them thinks Bombs of Death are fucking amazing. Also ran Schematics Records. He would also engineer records for Hot Water Music, Suffocation, dozens of other bands. A incredible person behind that board, a unbelievable musician, and the ASA connection is running strong in Skeen Records. 0010 release number 10 for Skeen Records is the most famous record to come out on this label. Yeah, I think I'm safe in saying the most famous record to come out on this label. The Green Day Sweet Children 7-inch, which came out in 1990. Let's add this to the list. Boom, there we go. Green Day. In 1990, Green Day would put out their final 7-inch with their original drummer, John Kiffmeyer, and he would be replaced, of course, by Tré Cool after it. This was recorded while the band was on tour. They named the record Sweet Children is named after the band's original name, and it features a bunch of early compositions by the band as well as their very classic, certainly to me, cover of The Who's My Generation. They would eventually show up as bonus tracks on the Kerplunk CD reissue. There would be 3 pressings of this 7-inch. The first released on black and pink for a total of 1,500 copies. Then there's a second pressing of 600 on black with a new cover, and that is the cover is printed on red or gray paper. There's a third press, which is on red vinyl with a different sleeve. And then there's apparently another press in there. I think sometimes people break up the red and the gray sleeve pressing, but I'm pretty sure it's just one pressing of those, at least according to the insert that's found in that release. There's also a bootleg which came out in Japan in 1997. The final pressing, I should say, is also limited to 500 copies on red vinyl. A very expensive record, a very hard record to track down. Certainly a few copies of it out there floating around, so maybe you'll find it. It was recorded by Tim Mack from the band Halo of Flies, who would go on to record a few releases coming up for Skeen Records. And Jeff would normally get these bands to record while they were in town, playing shows in St. Paul or Minneapolis around that time. Yeah, right. So, that's a big money one. I got a copy of it. Need a first press. Need a third press. Well, I probably wanted the bootleg too, but who's got money to do that stuff now? I can't do that. Release number 11 is the Bad Trip Go Split Tour EP, and that's a little misleading. It was a split EP that was recorded on tour. It wasn't just limited to the tour. It was released on Skeen Records, and it's also the second band on the label who has an exclamation point in their name, which is interesting. And Skeen has an exclamation point in its name. I don't think that's actually that interesting, but I had it down as an interesting point in my notes here. It's also recorded by Tim Mack from Halo of Flies, and it was recorded once again when the bands were on a mid-tour stop. Go is a legendary New York hardcore band featuring Mike B.S. from the hardcore band SFA and a future member of Ego and No Mistake. And the bassist Anthony Emo Ciampa would go on to play in Puzzlehead and play with Ted Leo as well, or with Ted Leo. And I think we also played with Ted Leo after that, but I might be mistaken on that part of it. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, Bad Trip features the showrunner from Dexter. And then release number 12 is the Angry Sons Fuel Split Tour EP, which came out in 1990. It was recorded once again by Tim Mack from Halo of Flies on a tour stop. The record says that it was recorded in 91, but I think it was recorded in 90. It was pressed on red and black vinyl. The red is the limited version. It doesn't show up very often. Berkeley, California's Fuel are the pioneers to me of that sort of gruff, melodic, post-Fugazi, emo, hardcore kind of sound. You know when you hear it, but like Hot Water Music, Against Me, I feel like maybe not directly influenced, but I feel like we're kind of following that sort of sonic wavelength. Leatherface, of course, in England would have been doing it a little bit before Fuel. Fuel's Josh Stofan would go on to play in Monsula and the White Trash Debutantes, and Fuel was just one of the late great, rest in peace, Sarah Kirsch's legendary bands. Before joining Fuel, she had played in Skin Jobs, who would later become Sawhorse, would also play in one of the greatest bands ever on Gravity Records, when there's quite a few great bands on Gravity Records. John Henry West, but also playing Bread and Circuits, Torches of Rome, as well as being part of Pinhead Gunpowder with Billie Joe Armstrong from Green Day and Aaron Cometbus from Crimpshrine. So a weird connection between all of those bands, or that band, through Skene Records too, all the alumni. Though I think they're all also all on lookout in different projects as well. So it's not that strange. So we move on to record number 13, which is the Hugel 7-inch, HGUAL. Oh wait, did I not? Fuck. That was a Green Day. Tim Mack. That's the only thing of importance from Green Day. I think I also forgot to make the Crimpshrine connection, or maybe that's coming up. This thing was also kind of like a work in progress, this whole chart, as I learned more stuff. We moved on. We're way over here now. All right, there we go. All right, like we'll keep doing this. We're this far into this. We can't stop now. All right, so now let's move on to Hugel, who were from Richmond, Virginia, kind of grungy rock kind of vibe for this band. Their first full length this is the first full length released on Skene. They're Riding on Three Wheels CD. It was supposed to come out on vinyl, but it only appears to have ever come out on CD. This record features bassist John Peters, who would go on to play in the godly Alabama Thunderpussy, and while the guitarist Mark Morton would later play in Fatty Love before forming the band Join the Priest, aka Lamb of God. And weirdly, to bring it back to Crimpshrine, Abe Spear, who's an original member of Burn the Priest, took the photo of Aaron Cometbus in the apartment that Aaron Cometbus shared with Jeff Spiegel for the first Pinhead Gunpowder 7-inch. Shit, this thing's a crazy interconnected mess. Let's add that. Let's see what happens when we add that to this thing. Oh, we got Pinhead Gunpowder added now. But I don't think I've connected it to every other band that it connects to. But Sarah Kirch is connected to it now. There we go. We're cooking. We're moving along. We're like 1/5 way through this thing. Maybe a little bit more. Anyway, the next release on it, the label, would be a kind of retrospective comp release from 1991 called Can You Break Through? It features all the non-compilation releases that have come out on the label, or a song from each of these bands, with the exception of Awake, who aren't on this, and Hugel, who they just put out the CD by, are not on this as well. But who knows what happened there with how these things were recorded, or when masters were received, or whatnot. But it sounded interesting those two bands were left off. And there's also one bizarrely non-Skene band on here, with the band from Pennsylvania, Lost, and their song is taken from their Headhunter release CD. Who Headhunter Records would, of course, release Rock from the Crypt and Drive Like Jehu, and then would also run the subsidiary label Grilled Cheese Records, which would be Blink 182 and all sorts of stuff. But I don't think I have that connecting on here at all. I don't even think I have this comp. Let's see if this comp shows up when I move through this. No. Oh, but I do have my line now connecting Tim Mack to Sticks and Stones, because the next release on the label would be Sticks and Stones, Coop Flowers Can't Fail from 1991. It is Sticks and Stones' second release on the label. Fantastic records. 3 covers, though, this time around, where they do a cover of the New Jersey band PED, Dead Kennedys, and, of course, New Jersey's own Bruce Springsteen. Recorded by Tim Mack when the band was on tour, as is the method of Skene Records at this point. And it is, as with all Sticks and Stones records, worth getting. There's a discography available. The Bouncing Souls guys have put it out, and you can find that wherever you listen to music, and grab that if you can. Maybe out of print on vinyl and stuff. But all right, release number 17 is the band Bob Evans and their Adult World CD and tape. Did not come out on vinyl. This is a Maplewood, New Jersey band by way of Maplewood, Massachusetts. I don't know if that's adding up. Maybe that's a typo on my part. Great band, like intricate, kind of emotive, gruff vocals, like hardcorey, but melodic. And but here's an interesting fact: the band's demo featured a guitar player who had left by this point, and that's Chris Zuzai from the band Floor Punch and tons of other legendary bands. But he was at one point briefly a member of Bob Evans. Kind of pop punky kind of vibe too. Bob Evans, great band, really cool band. Totally seemingly forgotten to the sands of time, but I'm a fan. And release number 18 is the DVA Tours 20th Century, 21st Century 21, sorry, which was released in 1991. This band was a street punk band from Brooklyn, New York. It came out on white and black vinyl. The bass player, Alan, was in Dog Tired, who were, of course, earlier released on Skeen Records. And Tom from the band, the guitarist and vocalist, had previously been in Zombie Squad, great underrated Connecticut hardcore band, and would go on to play in Speedway and Magnatones. Release number 19 on the label is Lucky, the Truth 7-inch from 1991. It's the lone release by this Delaware noisy melodic punk band. Would feature 2 future members of Railhead, and also Nick Rotundo, who played in Railhead, would go on to play in None More Black and Walleye, and is engineering and engineered records for Boy Sets Fire, and actually did a record for the band Left Behind, who did a split with Dead Letter Department, which is the first band that I ever sang hardcore with, kind of. And they're a pop punk band, bizarrely. But anyway, that's a personal connection. Release number 20 is The Trenchmouth Construction of a New Action, Volume 1. First There Was Movement from 1991. This is the first full-length LP from this legendary Chicago band, featuring Damon Locks, who has gone on to play in amazing projects, an amazing artist, and a former guest of Turn It a Punk. Check out his episode, a great episode, as well as featuring Fred Armisen, of course, from Saturday Night Live, former member of the New York hardcore band KGB, which also featured Vic Venom, who would go on to play in Reagan Youth, Nausea, Sacrilege, New York Sacrilege, and Chaos UK, and played in the 90s Chaos UK, which is kind of my favorite period for Chaos UK, when they were going to Japan, split with Deathside. That's some good shit, some really good shit right there. Fred would also go on to play in like the Mekons and God Devo, and has been on the podcast many times. So you can hear Fred talk much more in depth about all these subjects on his episode. Also, this record would be produced by Brad Wood, who produced hundreds and hundreds of amazing records, from Liz Phair's Exile in Guyville to Veruca Salt's American Thighs to Ben Lee's Grandpa Wood, which is a huge record for me when I was a kid, Sunday Real Estate's Diary, and all sorts of things. A great band. Fuck. Trenchmouth is also, as Cedric from At the Drive-In said when he was on the show, a huge influence on At the Drive-In and what they do. And I think Cedric, if I'm not putting words in his mouth, said that they are like the biggest influence on At the Drive-In and what At the Drive-In does. Release number 21 on Skeen, Bob Evans' Drought from 1992. The next release would be a split release between Trenchmouth and Circus Lupus. It was a split release also with Discord Records, the great Discord Records, a phenomenal label, obviously, you know. Circus Lupus, I believe that's a cover they do on their side of that record, if I'm not mistaken. Criminally underrated band. Anyone who knows that band is a fan. The next release would be the Candy Machine Body of Armistice Steppers release from 1992. Candy Machine's a great band. Don't have much details about them here. This is where my notes get a little shaky. All right, I think we'll be winding this thing down about now. But Well, we got a couple more things to talk about before I do. But we also have some things to add to our charts. Hey, if you're still bearing with me for this thing, thank you for doing it because, yeah, I don't know if I should put this up as a podcast because I think you kind of have to just watch this nightmare play out before your eyes. All right. Okay. Am I kind of caught up to where I am? There's Trench Mouth. All right. Yeah, but sorry, let me add some Damon Locke stuff. The Eternals, he would go on to play in, but then he also plays in Black Monument Ensemble. Unbelievable work that this group does. Check out some of the stuff he does. Also, Sugar ESP. Fred, as well as doing Saturday Night Live, has been on Portlandia and all sorts of stuff like that as well. All right, next thing we're getting to, I think I got some Circus Lupus, Discord Records, Candy Machine. Oh yeah, Kyle Kissick, who played later on with Jad Fair and played in Ink, was also in Candy Machine as well. Right, where are we next on the list? We have. I got to get to this one that I want to talk about. Is this the Jawbreaker? Have we got Jawbreaker on here now? Oh my God, this thing's getting a mess. Yeah, we had the Jawbreaker thing. All right, let's talk about this Jawbreaker. So, the next thing that kind of comes out on this label after the Candy Machine 7-inch is another Six and Stone 7-inch, which is a posthumous release. The band had broken up by this point. Then another Candy Machine record, the self-titled CD, great record. Then it's the Jawbreaker Crimpshrine split from 1993. This is a controversial release on this label, and I'll get to that in a second. The songs are taken from the first Jawbreaker demo. Adam from Jawbreaker told me that when they were there, Jeff wanted them to record with Tim Mack, but they were too tired to do it. They didn't have any songs to do it. So instead, they gave him a song from the very first demo for this split. The Crimpshrine song is a re-release of Sanctuary, taken from the Caution comp way back when. Adam kind of said, yeah, like they were no condition to want to record then, so they gave him the song. But they actually weirdly knew Joey from back in L.A., and so they heard Walt Mink 7-inch while they were staying with them and decided to do the song for him. So the Jawbreaker side, in their minds, is completely legit and straight up. The Crimpshrine side, however, a little more contested. This is taken from Maximum Rock and Roll issue 127 from 1993, December, the December issue. The Crimpshrine Jawbreaker, and this is from a classified ad taken out by Aaron Commonplus in the back of Maximum Rock and Roll in that issue. The Crimpshrine Jawbreaker split EP on Skiing Records was done without our permission. We gave them the song in 1991 for an 8-band double 7-inch benefit compilation for homeless shelters. The song surfaces 2 years later on a 2-band, 2-song, non-benefit rip-off single. And what I'd written about the benefit removed from my artwork, really lame. And better news, then he talks about how they were able to donate a bunch of money from the Crimpshrine LP to Food Not Bombs and the Free Clinic in Berkeley. But that was, yeah, as I say, taken out by Aaron in that issue of Maximum Rock and Roll way back when. I don't know about that 8-band compilation, other than the fact that there is something like that referred to on the insert of the Green Day second pressing of the Green Day 7-inch of the Sweet Children EP. But the song is actually taken from the Caution comp from way earlier, but that would have been 90, I guess that thing comes out. So anyway, I've not talked to Aaron about it, but that was his take on it from way back when. Interestingly enough, though, right above Aaron's classified ad, there's a classified ad from Kevin Gill, who ran Striving for Togetherness Records and voice of many different pro wrestling organizations, commentary at pro wrestling companies, and a guest of the Turned Out a Punk podcast, and a real amazing episode. So go back and listen to it. But he had taken out the classified ad right above it in Max Rock and Roll in that issue, looking for anyone who had Murphy's Law live recordings or rarities that he could trade for. So There you go. It's a punk connection. We're all connected. The next release on this label, okay, is this Shades Apart LP, which comes out. Let me see. Where am I? Oh man, we're a mess. If you stick with this. Stick with it. The information's there. The Shades Apart Neon LP in 1993, which was a split release with Sunspot Records, who put out the first Avail 7-inch, Revelation, or sorry, no, it wasn't actually, sorry. It was just on Skeen Records, Neon. A great record. Shades Apart is a really interesting band. They had done records on Sunspot Records, who did the first Avail record. They had also done records on Revelation Records and Wishing Well Records and Universal Records. They would be featured on the American Pie soundtrack. And yeah, a band that, like, at a time was, I think, in a lot of people's minds, the most likely to succeed, kind of coming out of hardcore in the post Quicksand landscape. At least that's how I kind of always inferred it. And a cool band you don't hear too many people talking about, or at least I don't hear as many people talking about these days. And it's a shame because they are worth checking out. Next, we have the Alloy Bob Evans split, which I think I have on here already now. Alloy featured members of Uniform Choice, Articles of Faith, Dag Nasty, Bob Evans, who we've talked about already. Also Bob Evans featured Andrew Kenson, who has done tons of stuff for Ecstatic Peace Records and does sound for Thurston Moore and all sorts of stuff as well. So there you go. Resurrection connects the Shades Apart. Anyway, okay. Getting lost in my own chart now. The next record on there would be record number 29, which is the Hard-Ons Gone Too Far CD, which was released on a few different labels, produced by the Slayer Hippie, featuring Jerry A on vocals on a track. Fuck, this record's awesome. Hard-Ons are one of the greatest bands of all time. One of my favorite Australian bands. A band that kind of defies scenes or times that you want to stick them in because they transcend it all so much. This record is well into their career and just as good as they never got bad. They're one of those bands that's never put out like a bad record. Really cool though, as a fan of this band, finding out there was like a Poison Idea connection when I got this CD. And as I say, this thing has come out in a few different places. I've never seen the vinyl of this. I still would love to get a vinyl copy on Skeen of this thing. Yeah, man. Check out Ray from the Hard-Ons. Check out Jerry A's episodes of Turned Out a Punk. Check out Ray and Jerry A together on, I think, the second episode of I Heard They Stream Live, because they would do a lot of stuff going from this. Jerry A would go on tour with the Hard-Ons a couple times back then, and then more recently they've done some touring and put out some records. And some of my favorite people, Ray from the Hard-Ons and Jerry A. I love those guys. Record number 30 was Trenchmouth's Inside the Future, which I believe is a split release with a major label. Or no, maybe that's Versus the Light of the Sun, which is the release number 34. Anyway, this goes on. I should also, though, before I just completely disintegrate this thing and log off, because it's been on for a while now, just talking to myself, we should talk about Slapper Reality, a great band that's on this label as well. There's the thing, Lifter Puller. Is Lifter Puller? Oh yeah, Lifter Puller. I skipped over that. Lifter Puller features a lot of Minneapolis legends. Lifter Puller features Tad Kubler, who would go on to play in the Hold Steady with Craig Finn of Lifter Puller, who's also in the great, no pun intended, fantastic band. Also featured Dan Monick, who would take photos of Atmosphere and Murs and Dillinger 4, and yeah, kind of a fixture in hip hop and punk, and kind of bridging those two worlds. Great band, Lifter Puller. They did a few different records on different labels, but once again, another Skeen connection right there, right? That was their Slip Backwards Nassau Coliseum 7-inch. Ever Ready was also a great band that's on this label. Slapper Reality. There I've had Slapper Reality, which features members from Florida Slapper Reality. Failure Face and No Fraud people are in that band. Okay, we've added. Just trying to see with this thing. It's on my way. Are we at the Latchkey Kids yet? I think I'm at the Latchkey Kids. Yeah, I'm at the Latchkey Kids. Okay, let's add the Latchkey Kids. The Latchkey Kids features John Gurinot, who would play in World Burns to Death. Also features my man Rhino, who does crew for Lagwagon, but also really keeps that Descendants ship on the road. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand. It also features future members of Phoenix TX playing in the band as well. Then we have, after that, the interesting band of the Action Slacks, which featured Tim Scallon, who has done stuff with Yes and Chicago in this band. Calvin Crime is also puts out a record, who would go on to become members of Har Mar Superstar. And yeah, I could go on. My voice is hoarse. I'm dying of thirst. I'm just talking to myself. This is my madness. More than anything, this is like my cry for help. This is like, this is what is going on in my head at any given time. I just had to force it out onto the world. So now you all have to see it. Gaze upon my ugliness. There it is. A fucking Skiing Records flowchart. Trying to think of other things that I forgot to mention. This label's amazing. Pick up these records. A lot of this stuff, minus the Green Day 7-inch, and the Trenchmouth records are getting really expensive too. A lot of this stuff is very cheap, dollar bin fodder. I found that Awake 7-inch with that letter from Tony Victory in like a dollar bin, and so you can too. Buy this stuff. And if you know Jeff Spiegel, tell him to get in touch. I'd love to punish him about all these things and get to the bottom of some of this stuff. Before I sign off, I'm going to check, did anyone brave this? There's no comments in the chat. Well, for the people of you that stayed here to the very end, thank you for bearing with this nightmare of a diatribe. And I'll do more of these, because what the fuck? Why not? You know, it's late at night. Everyone in my house is asleep. It's just an excuse for me to get the shit that's bouncing around in my head out on paper. I'll listen to the new episode of Turn Into Punk with Greg Turkington, aka Neil Hamburger. One of the best episodes I've ever done, by far. It's really cool. Just lost in this thing now. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening or watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Streams from the Gutter, or I Heard They Stream Live, or some stream show. I'll come Wednesdays. I'm just gonna be streaming, even if it's just this bullshit. Stay up. World's terrible. Fuck Nazis. Fuck all that shit. Like, screw that nightmare shit that we're living in right now. But in spite of that, try and keep your head up, because the world needs you in it to get better. Anyway, thank you for listening. Oh shit, that's the wrong button. Stop the recording.